this video we are going to be working on the 5.2 liter for the Dodge Dakota. Now before we get started working on this thing, I want to get you guys caught up on what I have done to it already, because I've kind of been working on it little pieces at a time. It's kind of how this video is going to go as well, just working on one or two things at a time after work and then trying to get this thing put together this weekend. So as you can see here, we've got this thing pretty well stripped down to just a short block. Bottom end is still in, currently still have the lifters in, timing chain still in, all that stuff. Heads are here, they are completely stripped. I've taken them all the way apart and I have cleaned them, and that's kind of as far as I've gotten. One of these heads is actually a junkyard head, which is something we might get into later, but I've got two stripped, good, clean heads right here. So that's pretty much all I've been doing, is taking stuff apart, cleaning a few things, and just kind of figuring out where I'm at. This engine fought and fought and fought coming apart. I've had broken exhaust manifold bolts, broken intake manifold bolts. I had a spark plug that was completely seized inside of the one other head that's not here anymore, because I've got the junkyard one down here. That's why I've got the second head, is because somebody cross-threaded or something. That thing was not coming out. So I just went, and it was easier and cheaper to get a junkyard head than to get the one repaired, and I'd rather have one that hasn't been repaired or boogered up before. So that's pretty much where I'm at. There's pieces scattered all over the place in here. There's a timing cover there, the valves are here, there's gaskets and seals and stuff for this engine. So the plan for this thing was to do a full refresh, all new gaskets, all new seals. We're not doing anything to the stock bottom end, it's going to stay as it is. Just go through everything, clean it all up. It's getting Arp Head Bolts, which I already have here, Cometic head gaskets, and the Harlan Sharp roller rocker arms, and everything else is going to be factory. The things I'm waiting on right now are the cylinder head dowels. I took these out. You guys will see why I removed them in a little bit. I'm waiting on those. I'm waiting on the head gaskets, and I'm waiting on two pairs of the rocker arms. Those were they're on back order, so I might not have them for a while, but I can get the rest of the long block put together without them and just loosely bolt a valve cover onto it. So tonight what I want to do is get these lifters out, and I want to get the spider and everything out here. I want to wire wheel the head surface, get all this graphite and crap off of here. I want to, once I'm done doing that, I've got a whetstone I'm going to run across it. I'm going to look for any high or low spots with that. If that checks out, we'll be good here. This will all be ready to go as far as this head surface goes. And then what I'm going to do after that, I'm going to flip the engine upside down, and as you can see, there's a bunch of sludge and a bunch of crap in here on the back of the spider and everything. I'm going to flip the engine upside down, soak it with kerosene that's in that bottle right there, and just rinse everything off, get all this crap out. And turning it upside down will prevent it from running down inside of the engine and getting stuck to the crank and stuff. This way I can have everything just fall onto this nice Walmart pan that I got sitting down here. So first thing, let's get all of these lifters out, and then we can attack this thing with the wire wheel and get all this crap cleaned off here. Alright, so I went ahead, I got all the lifters out there underneath that towel there. I was grinding stuff and blowing dirt around, so I wanted to get those covered up. But they're all out. I got the spider out, and I went ahead and I got the deck surfaces all clean. So step number one was wire wheeling, get all the graphite crap out of here. I went around and wire wheeled up on these surfaces here, and then I also went around the timing cover gasket just because I was in here running it already. You know, might as well clean up all of the other gasket surfaces that we need. After I got everything cleaned out, I came in here with an air gun. I blew all the dust out of this thing that I could, at least. So once everything was all cleaned up, I went and grabbed a whetstone, which is what is inside of here. Got a fine grit whetstone. It's actually a two-sided one. It's got a coarse grit, but we do not need to use a coarse grit. Grabbed this guy here, used the fine side, not the coarse side. Sprayed this thing all down with kerosene, and then I just ran this across for about a minute per each bank here, and I just ran this across and kind of cleaned everything up. This will not, redeck a deck surface. If you've got something that's warped or major damage, this isn't going to clear it up. What this will do, though, is clean up, hit any little random stuff you missed with the wire wheel, and it will show any high or low spots, because low spots will have, none of the little marks from this thing on it, and high spots will be very clean and very shiny. And the kerosene's cool because it lubricates everything, and as you're, scraping the surface, you're exposing fresh metal, and fresh metal likes to flash rust. Nice thing about the kerosene is that it immediately stops flash rust before it can even happen. Diesel fuel will do the same thing, and it's a little bit cheaper, but kerosene evaporates a lot faster, so I prefer to use it, and it's a little bit runnier, so it's easier to get into other random places. It's also good for rusty cylinder walls. So I'm going to flip this thing over, spray it with some kerosene, start scraping, get all the sludge out of here, and we can turn it back right side up, and we can start putting all the lifters back in. Alright, I've made pretty much all the progress I'm going to make for tonight. I've got the engine upside down. I'm letting some oil drip out of it that I poured in through the top. So, we got the new timing set all installed. That is ready to go. I poured some oil on the chain, spun the engine over a couple times just to pre-oil that thing a little bit. And then down here, if we can get down there, as you can see the spiders back in. All of the lifters are in, which is why this thing is full of oil. And everything is all cleaned up and ready to go. Head surfaces are done. Timing sets in. Lifters have been cleaned and reinstalled. The spider has been cleaned. The valley is all cleaned out, which I'll be able to show you guys a little bit more like tomorrow or something when the engine's not upside down. I didn't really think that all the way through, flipping it over like this, but I wanted it to drain overnight so that when I end up flipping this thing upside down again in the future to put the oil pan on and everything, it's not just going to leak oil everywhere. So I'm going to let that sit like that overnight. So yeah, that's your final update for tonight. I'll get back with you guys either tomorrow or the day after that. We'll tackle a few more little projects here and there on this thing, and then hopefully by the weekend we'll be ready to put the rest of this long block together, and we'll have most of the turbo 5.2 engine put together and ready to go. Alright, well, it's actually been a few days since that last clip that I recorded, but I've gotten a lot of things done. I was working on this thing an hour or two at a time every night after work, trying to get stuff put together, and currently the cylinder heads are all put back together. I've got the deck surface all cleaned up. Valves have been ground and reinstalled, so they'll be all sealed up. Of course, the springs and the retainers have been put back in, all of them, and I got my head gaskets sitting on here. One thing I wanted to mention before I go and really start putting stuff together, these head gaskets are not the same front and back. The little tiny hole here is supposed to be at the front. The big hole goes on the back on these, so if you're doing this on your own, that's how this works. See, there we go. There we go. Small hole, big hole, and this is because as the coolant travels through your engine, it is going to pick up heat the further back that it goes, so these larger ports allow more coolant to flow. That way your cylinders cool evenly. So if you end up flipping these and having the big hole in the front, small in the back, you will probably end up overheating a certain cylinder. All of the holes are the same. It is the head gasket that regulates the amount of coolant flow through, the block here. These are Cometic head gaskets, multi-layer steel, and this is part number that I went with. This is I think it's a .045. Got my ARP head bolts sitting up there, and then this right here are the cylinder head to block dowel pins that I got. So there is part number on them. This is a Chevy part, but it was the exact specifications that I needed for this engine, because I had a hard time finding on any of the Summit or Jags or anything a set of dowel pins that clearly stated that it fit these engines, because what you would find is these pins here said they fit these engines, but I found some other pins that were different sizes than this that also claim they fit, and obviously they don't, because these are the ones that fit. I replaced those because I went through and ran the whetstone over the block, so I took them all out. I bought a huge pack of them too, just in case I need more. There we go. But 5/16 by 1/2 inch, so that's the size that you need. They fit in there nice and tight. Also, something I wanted to show you, because I almost got myself in a lot of trouble here. See where that dowel pin's at? This hole on top of it looks exactly like the same hole that the dowel pin would go in, except that hole right there goes all the way through. I just about dropped one of these dowel pins down there, and luckily that hole is big enough that the pin just kind of slides in, so I was able to pull it back out with a magnet, but I just about screwed myself there and dropped a dowel pin down into one of the coolant jackets. Now it's time to go ahead and mount my cylinder heads back onto this engine, And then once that is done, we can start putting a bunch of other stuff together too, because right now my 2 pairs of Harlan Sharp roller rockers showed up. They're soaking in some oil right now, so I now have a full set for a V8, so those can go in, which means my push rods can go in, which means once I clean the valve covers out, the valve covers can go back on, and we can pretty much seal this whole engine up minus the intake manifold, because I don't have the reinforced belly pan for this thing yet. Yeah, let's get you guys set up, and then we'll go ahead and drop these heads on here and get them torqued up and have a complete long block for the first time in a little while. This right here is actually the junkyard cylinder head. So let's get this one on here. Drop her in on those dowel pins. And I'm going to keep my hip on it here and try to thread in one of these head bolts. That way somebody doesn't fall. Now one head bolt in there just to keep the head from falling off. And the dowel pins are locating it the rest of the way. And now I should probably move my heater out of the way. And then now we can put the other cylinder head on. This is the one that came from this engine, so I made sure that this head went back onto the same side of the engine that it originally came from. This was the original driver's side cylinder head. That was the junkyard one, which also came off the driver's side, but heads are the same, so it doesn't really matter. Take these gloves off so I can actually get a hold of these ARP head bolts. And I'm going to put them in, just get them a little snug with a ratchet, and then I'll go around and I'm going to torque them. I'm going to do it in 3 sequences, starting with probably 30 foot-pounds and then going up to 60 or 65 and then 100. The factory torque spec is 105 and the ARP torque spec is 100. It's actually lower on the ARPs, which is a little bit odd, but that's what ARP says, so that is what we are going to do. And I'm just going to get them a little bit snug. Not tight, just want to make sure that they're all bottomed out. I just have those rockers in here still. Okay, that's nice, so I just torque them out. Which I just got strong wheels turns, but you know, still we'll just have to deal with it. Okay. I'm going to pass through with the 100 foot-pounds twice just to double check things. So let's do the first round. Oh god. 100 foot-pounds really isn't that much work, but we're going to understand. Sure. We're going to understand this. What makes it difficult. Okay, your torque to change, and just have a little fun click. And there's one fully torqued cylinder head. There we go. The engine is officially a long block. We've got cylinder heads, and this thing is jammed up. Okay, now I get to put the torque wrench away, and we can drop the push rods in here. I get my rocker arms in, and the rocker arms have to be torqued as well, but I will use the 3/8 torque wrench for that, because they only get torqued like, it's like 20 or 25 foot-pounds or something like that. I might actually have to watch my own video to remember what that was. But long block complete. Oh god, I about knocked shit over. Alright, I went ahead and got all of the Harlan Sharp rocker arms in here. These are all done and all torqued up. After I put them in, I was a little worried because they were pushing all the valves down a little bit, even on the ones where, you know, the valve was supposed to be closed, where the lobe was located on the cam. But I ended up, once I had them all in, I spun the engine over a couple times, and that actually fixed it. What happened was these lifters, from sitting for so long, weren't like preloading. They were all just stuck in all the way up at the top. So once I spun the engine over a couple times, all the valves are now closing back up all the way, and all the lifters are doing what they're supposed to be. So that fixed that issue, and I went ahead, since I've got a chance to actually do it, I sprayed some WD-40 in all of the cylinders just to get a little bit of oil in there, just in case I somehow forget to put some fogging oil or something in there. At least there's a little bit in there, or if I'm, you know, out here spinning the engine around and stuff, there's something in there just to keep me from tearing the cylinder walls up. So the next step is actually just to get the valve covers put on it. I've got gaskets right there. Valve covers are right there. These I need to go in, just probably going to run a wire wheel around the bottom of the valve cover a little bit, clean them up, and then just blow some compressed air in there, get them all cleaned out. And I'll take a razor blade around the top of these heads here, get these all cleaned up, and put those on, and then we'll have that all done. And then probably going to do timing cover and water pump, because I can get to those. The water pump's sitting over there, so we'll get those cleaned up. I'll replace that front seal right there, and then we'll have pretty much all of the engine put back together, minus, you know, this guy right here. So yeah, we'll get those valve covers cleaned up, get those put on there, get that timing cover cleaned up, get that popped on there, water pump, and then that'll probably do it for tonight, because that's probably going to be another hour's worth of work. For right now, let's try to get those valve covers on there, get as much of this engine sealed up as we can, and that'll pretty much finish this up for the night. Well, there you go. I was able to get this far on this thing tonight, and I've got a lot of small stuff and a lot of big stuff put together on this engine. The pile of parts in the bed of the truck has gotten significantly smaller. There's a lot less boxes full of junk. In fact, a lot of the boxes are now sitting up here, so I can get rid of them. So what we've got here, valve covers are installed. I've got the oil cap on there. I need to go in the house. I've got some little grommets and some breathers to put in here, but I'll go grab those and do those probably sometime like next weekend or during the week or something. But these are all the way in. I got the timing cover completely on, water pump, the alternator and alternator bracket, tensioner pulley, idler pulley, the harmonic balancer, and the crank pulley are all the way on. Basically, the whole front accessory system is on. There's nothing missing. I also got the dipstick is on, so I tried to get as much of this stuff put together as I could tonight, since, you know, the less piles of parts and bolts I have in there, the better it's going to be, and this is less stuff I have to do when some of the parts I'm waiting on get here. So basically what this thing needs to be fully put together is the intake manifold needs to go on, throttle body, all that stuff. I need to modify the 5.2 liter fuel rail so that my injectors will work, kind of like how I had to modify them on the 3.9 liter. And I need to get the exhaust manifolds on. They'll be going on, of course, flipped like I did with 3.9. Spark plugs, oil pan, the bypass hose up there. I'll put a couple sensors and a couple other little things just to tidy up the top end. And I need to put the pilot bearing on, because this thing came out of an automatic, so there's no pilot bearing in the crank. Then from there, the engine is completely done, and then I just have to stick a flywheel and a clutch on it, get this transmission rebuilt, and then this assembly can go back in the truck and it'll be V8 swapped. So it won't be running yet, but once the engine goes in, we'll be really close to having the V8 in there, and I'm probably going to get this thing running a couple times before turbocharging it, just to make sure this thing's good, so that just to test the engine out. And I also want to get a couple heat cycles in it and flush all the junk out of it before I put a couple of turbos on it. So yeah, it's looking like a complete engine almost now. I'm really happy. This thing has been in pieces sitting on this engine stand since like August, September. To see it getting this close to being done and this close to being ready to go in the truck, it's a really good feeling. I'm really excited. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. I will be back this week, this coming weekend or next weekend. We'll be getting the rest of the engine put together, and then we'll have a rebuild video on the transmission coming up after that. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.